Real end game is that a self-appointed group of people in Europe and the United States mostly, but also westernized countries like Japan, South Korea, Australia, etc. But mostly it's Western or westernized elites who have done very well out of neoliberal capitalism and have made more money and have more influence and power than anybody would ever imagine in the history of civilization, have gotten together. And they feel that they have a formula that they're going from top down to impress on the rest of us. And there's certain protocols that they abide by. One is they're never subject to the consequences of their own ideology. So they have to be anointed and exempt. So John Kerry has to have a private plane on our behalf, or Al Gore's got to get a 10,000 square foot home on our behalf, or Michael Bloomberg and Bill Gates have to fly all over the world and invest billions of dollars in communist China on our behalf. And their goal is to supersede the constitutional governments in Europe and the United States with a supra-government under their control. So if Ireland wants to have a lower capital gains tax than, say, the EU countries in average, they can't do that because that would be freelancing. Or if the United States meets the Paris Climate Accords without being a part of it, that doesn't matter. It's a renegade state. So there's been these experiments throughout history. Alexander the Great's Brotherhood of Man, Napoleon's continental system, some of the people that dreamed up the League of Nations that want Esperanto as a universal language. But they've all failed because history shows us that the most effective means of organizing people is the nation state under a constitutional system that reflects unique characteristics, protocols, traditions within defined borders. And that's what they're trying to destroy. They say it's different and will succeed where other utopian schemes have failed because we're a global village now. And so they're not shy about suggesting that the ability to call somebody up halfway across the world on your cell phone, or to look to email instantaneously, or to have TikTok in every nation, or Facebook in every nation, has created a one world culture. And that has made these previously failed political efforts viable now, at least they feel. It's no accident that some of the people who are driving this come out of Silicon Valley, especially because they profit from it. And so they feel there's one international culture, and that culture has been organic, and all it needs now is a formalized political structure so that, somebody in Montana doesn't light a fire out in his yard to have a barbecue, or somebody in London doesn't cook on a natural gas stove, or somebody in Nigeria doesn't pass a law suggesting your sex is determined biologically. That's what they're after. Klaus Schwab, as you know, wrote a book called COVID and the Great Reset. And he said this was the panic that induced global cooperation and lockdowns and uniform policies about social distancing and mask wearing could be superimposed in peacetime or non-plague time. And that shows you what the world can do if it has a sufficient terror. Hillary Clinton said that you should never let a crisis go to waste, that COVID allowed her, she thought, to promote single-payer health care. Here in California, Gavin Newsom said, well, it's tragic about COVID, but it has at least given us a chance to have, quote, a more progressive capitalism. And the premise of the subtext of that is that nobody in their right mind would willingly surrender their sovereignty over to this group of people who have no allegiance to any particular nation and never, as I said, live by their own ideology. So there has to be either coercion, or people have to voluntarily give up their sovereignty because they're scared to death about climate or COVID or energy crisis. So they try to, they really do want to cut back on fossil fuels, so that could create a crisis. Or they tell people in Holland or Europe that nitrogen levels are too high in farming, and therefore we've got to cut back on this or that. So they're always looking for a crisis to allow them to kind of sneak in with political authoritarianism. Well, I think there's been a pushback. We saw it with the Trump candidacy and 4 years of presidency. And I think now the opposition to it, for better or for worse, is in the Republican Party, and the old globalist interventionists, I guess you would call it the McCain, the Bush, the Romney nexus, is over with. So whatever a candidate is, a serious candidate to hold higher office, either president, vice president, or Senate, it's going to be in opposition to the Great Reset. They're going to be for border security. They're going to be not for optional military operations in the Middle East. They're going to be for energy self-sufficiency. They're going to be for a unique American culture that privileges the middle classes. That's that's against the old stereotype of the Republican Party as silk-stocking aristocrats on the golf course. So that's the revolutionary reaction in this country. And it has counterparts in Europe. You see it with demonstrations in France and Britain. So I think there's a lot of anger toward these elites. A lot of it comes from their hypocrisy. And they're just simply not willing to live in the manner they want everybody else to.